Hello everyone, and welcome to Acupuncture is My Life. I have a question I like to ask, and that question is, are you aware that worry as an emotion is one of the most common emotional causes of disease globally? You see, especially as a result of what we've been faced with over, let's say, the recent past, along with more extreme, rapid, and radical social changes we've experienced over the past 2 decades. Now you see, in this episode, I plan to sit with a registered dietitian to discuss ways in which foods can exacerbate worry as an emotion, along with myself sitting with an expert panel to discuss ways in which we can deal with this emotion once it's become a disorder, along with acupuncture. Because many of you are totally unaware that chronic worry can negatively impact a person's lungs, a person's spleen, a person's heart, and even a person's liver. Now, when I come back, we'll dive into chronic worry as an emotional disorder. I'll be right back.
Acupuncture is my life. Acupuncture is my life. Acupuncture is my life. Acupuncture is my life. Acupuncture is my life.
Welcome back. Now, when it comes to acupuncture, there are several basic acupuncture points on the lung meridian, the heart meridian, the large intestine meridian, as well as the governing vessel, to treat chronic worry as an emotional disorder. Now, in cases where a patient is presenting with symptoms, let's say, such as slight shortness of breath or persistent cough, uncomfortable feeling in the chest, or even like a tensing sensation in the shoulders, I may include acupuncture point lung 7 in the treatment protocol. Why? Because this point tends to relieve the tense discomfort of the neck and shoulders, as well as the persistent cough, because this point tends to descend the chi of the lung. And if the patient is, let's say, or if a patient is presenting with symptoms relative to chronic worry, such as, let's say, heart palpitations, slight feeling of tightness in the chest, and even insomnia, I may include acupuncture point heart 7. Why? Because this point tends to calm a person's spirit, treat insomnia, and regulate the heart to treat palpitations. Now, I love including acupuncture point large intestine 4 to support circulation and break up any type of stagnation that tends to impede this circulation as a result of chronic worry. And one of my all-time favorite points when treating patients experiencing chronic worry is acupuncture point do 24, because this point is great for benefiting the brain as well as calming the spirit, along with treating insomnia. You see, acupuncture can benefit individuals who are faced with having to deal with chronic worry as a mental and emotional disorder. Now, after this break, I will be sitting with an expert panel to discuss ways in which we can address this disorder personally, along with acupuncture. I'll be right back.
Acupuncture is my life. Acupuncture is my life. Acupuncture is my life. Acupuncture is my life.
Hello everyone, and welcome back. I'm here before a great panel. Centrella Young-Trotty, Dr. Ada Sandoval, and Jacqueline Chan. And we're going to build on worry because, as we all understand, right, worry is one of the most common emotional causes of disease in the world. Okay, and especially as a result of what's gone on over, let's say, the past 2 years, it stems even beyond that. Like, worry over the past few decades has become, as the world has evolved, it's developed, and we've become more of a global society. Worry has begun to affect so many people globally that it's become a cause for disease that many doctors, many psychologists, psychiatrists, and even acupuncturists are finding themselves busy treating many disorders as a result of worry. Now, I want to start out with Jackie. Okay, let's sort of like look at the past year and a half, going on 2 years, right?
Yeah.
And from what you're seeing, whether it's within your own community or outside of, let's say, when you're doing hair or colleagues or whatever, how do you see worry as having affected people since or as a result of what's been going on over the past year and a half, 2 years?
People definitely have used the word worry more in conversation. Seeing people come back, like I said previously, I came back to work in June 2020, so I came back fairly early.
Right.
People were coming out of their houses just to get their hair done and going right back home. Most of our conversations had the word worry. I'm worried. I'm worried for me. I'm worried for my kids. I'm worried for my parents who live in London. I'm worried. I'm worried. I'm worried. Did we allow ourselves to let worry take way and take over?
Well, would you say this worry sort of correlates with the amount of uncertainty a lot of people are facing, or would you say this worry is more tied to what has already transpired? Because when I say uncertainty, a lot of people, many individuals are uncertain about their futures.
Yeah.
Where they're going, whether it be employment, whether it be their relationship, their children's future, their health.
Yes.
Like, did you gauge a sense of that type of worry, or worry just as to what happened and, oh my gosh, I gotta bounce back from this?
I think it was the worry about the unforeseen future.
Yeah.
Because of the recklessness of what had happened, in the past only 4 months, because it's really hit the United States in January, approximately, maybe December.
Right.
But the swell of it was in March and April.
Right.
So as I started seeing people in the summer, the worry was always about the future and the current and the future.
Well, let me ask you this. Now, outside of the United States, even let's consider or take your community into consideration and tell everyone your community. It's the
Filipino community.
Yeah.
Filipino
So
community.
Now we're thinking global. Like, did you find a lot of your relatives worrying about people back at home?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
In what way?
It was handled very differently in the Philippines, and I'm sure a lot of people with family in other countries.
Really?
It was handled very differently.
How was it handled?
We thought we had it hard. They had a president who literally was pulling martial law. You may get shot on the street, and he had done this before, and it worked. And the drug war, this is what he was doing in the Philippines. So everyone was so scared to even be outside, which brought more worry, because worry is something, you're worrying about something intangible. So now everyone's home in the Philippines worried about what's coming, and we're all worried about our family and what's possible.
Because think about it, attempting to think of it from your family's perspective, right? Like, let's just say if someone needed some type of medication or food or just had to get out.
That was a very interesting thing to talk about.
That can be scary.
Yes, because you were worried if you ran out of diabetes medication and you needed a refill, but it wasn't your day to go because it wasn't your, whatever it was they were going off of. I think it was like your Social Security last 4 digits or something like that.
Okay.
And it wasn't your day. how do you explain that if you get caught on the street by a police officer? Ooh. So we did not have to deal with that here. I don't know why we were so, because that's what they dealt with in the Philippines. But again, the culture is quite different. Where you can be a little bit more subdued and, you know, I'll just deal with what I'm dealt with.
Wow. Well, Dr. Ada Sandoval, welcome to the show. Thank you. And I mean, I'm going to start out with a similar question that I've asked Jackie, and understanding that you're from Colombia, South America. When we look at worry, and then we'll come back to just general discussion, from what you've noticed, let's say from family members, colleagues, friends back in Colombia, was there that sense of worry back home for you?
Thank you, Dr. Leroy, and my colleagues sitting here. I think there are several elements that we have to look at, because we have to take a look at the social context. Colombia is different. It's South America. It has a different socioeconomic status. It has a different way of doing things. Yes, the worry was there because it's the fear of the unknown. Excuse me, which is something that the brain is not prepared for. Right. You're going to respond immediately either to that situation, you're going to face it, or you're going to become frozen. So we have to pay attention to that, because there are different things that we are exposed to. So in Colombia, some people have low socioeconomic status, right, middle class socioeconomic status, and the people who have more money, more resources, more than anybody else. So it's not going to be equal access to the things that they need on a day-to-day basis. Right. Whereas here in North America, we may deal with it in a different way, because somehow we don't have that type of restrictions. So you have a little bit of, I'll say, a more accessibility to things and resources, so you don't have to worry that much. So it is different. Now, in terms of the worry itself, how we human beings deal with, is to try to see if we could become aware of what the worry is, what is the worry about, because it's a cognitive process. And when I say cognitive, we're looking at cognition, the way we think, how we think. It's like thinking about thinking. It's a little bit challenging to try to look and see if we could actually manage it, but it works, because if you're constantly worried about something that hasn't happened, then it becomes a problem. You don't have a technique to really look at what the item that you worry about is, and see if you could actually take a look at the steps that you're going to take to solve that problem. Right. Because then it'll become anxiety, general anxiety disorder, and then becomes a psychosis. I can't really do anything. You start thinking, I'm not a good person. I'm going to do something to myself. So it's actually going to go to the next step, which is a no-no, because you have to start identifying what the problem is and looking at the options to do problem solving about that issue that is happening.
What's that next step?
The next step is to really, once you identify it, you're recognizing what the problem is, you're going to have to look and see what the options are. A lot of times people do not have options, and then they become enclosed because they don't want to take a look at it. And that's how we started to develop the different psychological disorders.
Is worry too early in the game to even diagnose? I feel like worry is just something so small that you don't find medical help for it.
Exactly, it could be. Some people are so enclosed into themselves that they just want to remain there. Some people start thinking and questioning, how could I make it happier? I don't like to use the word better, because I think that people are good in nature. And how do I become happier? What am I not doing that I'm at this stage? But it's not easy to really become conscious of that. So we, in our field, the clinical social work field and the psychology field, we actually think that it works, because it's the only thing closest to a scientific method that proves that yes, it does work. So nowadays, because of what happened, which Jackie presented in a very nice way. Circumstances have changed, and we have a pandemic, and we don't really know how to deal with it because all of a sudden we lose our jobs, we can't come out of the house. Okay, so now asking for help and getting help, it becomes different. It's okay to go and ask for help. It's okay to get help, to actually access a way to become a happier person. Because we don't have those resources anymore. What else can I use to actually replace this negative thinking for a more positive one that will make my life easier and emotionally stable to handle? And that's the key.
Wow. Yeah. But now I want to take a look at Centrella Young-Trotty. Now, you're an expert in my book, certified yoga instructor and fitness trainer. Now I want to ask you, I want to take a different angle. I want to look at it from a different angle. In dealing with your clients.
Yes.
And in light of what society, and I'm speaking global society, has just gone through.
Yeah.
Over the past year and a half, 2 years, approaching 2 years. How do you feel that worry fits into, or how do you feel worry has affected your clients?
How do I feel worry has affected my clients?
Not me, so how does it play a part?
Because really that's true. So let's just say my clients, right? So we've decided that this is a group of people that have made a decision to change something about their lives. Right. So that's safe to say they come to someone who knows exactly how to get them where they want. So they're asking for help in this arena, right?
Right.
So they show up. The worry translate from life, of course, when the unknown, and then just the everyday, the simple things like, oh, what if this person thinks that I cut them in line, or what if this person thinks I didn't do that, or what if my child's teacher? It's a pattern, and sometimes the worry is passive, and we just adopt it. And then sometimes the worry has, when something like COVID happens, it takes a different form, because now we're worried about staying alive, and we're worried about going to the grocery store, and we're worried about our loved ones, and it's happening so fast, and it's unknown. So that worry is just a different type of breed of worry that I had never seen before. So the strategy that we take is surrendering.
But let me ask you this. Do you feel, or do you notice that when you train your clients as far as exercise or yoga, it helps them mentally?
Oh, absolutely. Because you need to, Dr. Ada and I were just speaking about it, right? Your emotions need to be expressed.
Right.
So the yoga process is absolutely training you for that.
Right.
The yoga positions sometimes are very complicated. They're not easy to get into. They hurt. You're angry. You start to go through all these emotions. But what the yoga is trying to teach you is how to breathe in an uncomfortable situation, how to get through it, and then see the growth.
Is that a release mechanism? This breathing process?
Absolutely. Okay. Well, the breathing releases tension. So I myself am a person who will be like, oh, why is my neck hurting? What's wrong? But I've been holding my tension in my teeth the whole time, because I'm like, oh, what am I going to cook later? Did this happen? Did that happen? I don't feel like doing that. And then that just becomes the pattern. The worry pattern just worsened. So it came from, oh, am I going to get this work done? Am I going to get that? Am I going to have a job? Am I going to be, people were losing the head of their households.
Right.
People had loved ones that they wasn't going to be able to see. The worry took on a form like you wouldn't believe, but whether the worry is great or small, you still have to accept that you have no control over that.
But do you feel like after, let's say, a good yoga session or whatever?
I don't feel I know for sure. I know for sure.
And you see this?
Absolutely. Yesterday, I did a yoga class myself yesterday. I wasn't teaching, and we did heart openers. And normally I do heart openers and it's fine. But yesterday, There were so many heart openers.
I have to ask, what's a heart opener?
Okay, so heart opener in yoga is anything where you press the heart forward and open up, and usually surrender, and it just allows these emotions to flow through the body. Now, sometimes that can be overwhelming because you're like, what's happening? But for someone like myself, I just started to think about things I hadn't thought about, connect the pieces. It just all starts to make sense. It helps you create this emotional roadmap.
Right.
And you start to connect the emotions with actions. That's actually what yoga is, moving on the breath. So as I raise my arm, I inhale. As I bring my arm down, I exhale. It's training me to see what's going on. If I'm noticing my hand going up in the air and my hand coming down, my foot moving, you know what I'm not thinking about? The worry. Because now I'm focused on the breath.
Wow.
And if I can change my mindset long enough to let that become the new pattern, then I've defeated the worry in this moment, in this instance.
But these heart openers, right? Does it ever elicit an emotional
Absolutely,
release?
yes.
Where you'll see a client perhaps
Cry a lot.
Wow. I can see that being
a lot of crying, happy, sad, confused crying.
This is so cool.
Yeah, may I add something to what Cintra is saying? I love Cintrella because she touches, and I love everyone here and you that are watching.
Nice.
Love you guys for listening. But while Cintrella was talking, the body is an amazing machine. So when you are doing yoga, and I have done some with her, she's a great teacher, your brain is starting to learn how to do things differently.
That's
how
right.
not to
New
have
way,
that
new patterns.
And while the brain is doing that, it's actually allowing the heart to allow the blood flow to go in a smoother way to manage the tension. And once you breathe, the oxygen gets to the brain, which it gets to the neuron.
Right.
The neuron has the center, the nucleus, the body, the dendrites, which are the endings, and then the axon, which is covered with myelin, which helps the action potential from one neuron to the next. And what the breathing is doing is actually allowing that oxygen to go into the synaptic gap or synaptic cleft to open up a little bit and then allow muscles to relax.
Which is so cool.
We need to understand that. If we don't understand it, then how are we going to learn the process of really incorporating these new ways to manage life and tension around us? And it's not only internally, we're talking about biology, and we could continue to look within because that's what yoga is doing. But look at what's happening on the outside, in the social environment, and we need another acupuncturist by life session.
Well, can I add to that just real quick? I won't stay long. So we were talking about the neurons and changing it. So I was watching something on TV, and the woman was worried about her sister. She hadn't heard from her, and to wrap the story up, it ended up the sister had died. They found the body, but the body had just been violated in so many ways. So the doctor, the examiners, the medical examiner said, bring a picture of you and your sister. So when she showed up, he said, did you bring the picture of you and your sister like I told you? And she said, yes. He said, put it right here. He said, now look at that. That is your sister, okay? He said, that's your sister. That's the memory I want you to store. And he said, when you pull the cover back, only look at her to identify her, but that's your sister. But you see in that moment how he gave her
So thoughtful.
another way of remembering her sister. Now in her mind, every time that memory, that picture.
Yeah.
Every time that memory, that picture, instead of seeing her sister on a cold slate.
Right.
So these little small things that we can do to reduce our suffering every day. You can say, okay, I took yoga on Monday, and guess what? I felt better. Maybe I should do it again.
Yeah.
Because if you keep thinking that, then eventually your body says, hey, we need yoga today. So the body starts to say, hey, we're tight, we're crooked, let's get to a class. Because it becomes a new pattern.
And the same thing for the workout and exercises.
Yep.
You know, once you start exercising, we all know in the general population what a workout high is. Your serotonin levels, which is the neurotransmitter responsible for mood stabilization, goes higher. So you're going to want to feel that again. Your brain said, I want more of the same. So you're going to do, you continue.
brain as well.
Yes, you could teach your brain.
It's interesting. I just took a color class yesterday with Jo Blackwell, who is, she's a titan, she's a L'Oreal professional, she's one of the top in the world. So yesterday she had us do this quick exercise because she's very into the mind. She had us cross our arms, right? So you cross your arms. Now she said, uncross them and do the other way. And we were all like, she said, you're squishing your chest. Does it feel good? No. She said, do it again. Okay, normal. She had us do it opposite again. She had us do it 4 more times. And the more you do it, the more your body knows where to go now. And your brain, like you just said, she said the same thing. It's all connecting each time you do the other way, and your body starts. Yes. Yes.
Wow, it's so awesome having you guys here.
Yeah.
And my audience listening to this, because even from an acupuncture perspective, right, worry tends to knot chi. And chi, somewhat being synonymous with energy, it can't flow throughout the body harmoniously, and it affects the internal organs, and that's how it causes disease. Because if you worry a lot, and that's why I brought up yoga, you start to present with shallow breathing. And when that happens, it affects, of course, your lung chi. Even when it comes to concentration, pensiveness, things like that, it affects the spleen. And when it comes to acupuncture, the spleen and stomach's responsible for digestion. So individuals will notice their bowel movements have changed.
Yes.
You know, their preference for certain types of food. So when it affects the spleen chi becomes deficient. People crave sweet foods, and that serves as a stimulant. So as an acupuncturist, I would see this, and I would have to treat it and also open up gates to get chi and blood moving again. And this is why, like, I have Centrella on this panel, you and Jackie, because the thing is just to have someone, let's say, to talk with, and she has her clients. You have your patients that sit with you, and Centrella has her clients. These are all mechanisms that get people to open up, release, and once you release, this knotted chi begins to open, and it flows harmoniously throughout the body, which is like super, super awesome, you know. But I have a question for you, Jackie. Like, when you're talking to your clients, right, and you're doing their hair, what type of energy do you feel coming from them in a sense of worry before they begin to open up? And I would assume this would happen in the early stages when they first sit in your chair and you guys start talking. They're not loose right away. You know, it takes time, right?
No, it takes time.
It takes time
For people to lose.
But do you tend to feel the energy like being stuck? Like, and then as you're doing their hair, they're becoming more loose and they're talking to you more.
Yeah, I would say they bounce off my energy.
Nice.
Usually,
Yeah.
and that's how, you know, we flow through.
So when they walk out of your chair, do you notice a difference in their demeanor? In
Yes,
their attitude?
and this is how I know we had a really good energy moment for an hour. If they turn around and find me in the room and they wave at me because they want to close it out. But there's some people who are not there for that, and I feel it, and I respect it, and I just do my job, and I finish, and they're appreciative, and they go, and it's okay. And they don't open up, but that's okay to me too. What am I going to do?
That is so cool.
Yeah.
It's a lot of energy.
I'm not going to force that energy.
Well, you know what? I need to take a quick break. Guys, we'll be back right after this commercial break.
Acupuncture is my life. Acupuncture is my life. Acupuncture is my life. Acupuncture is my life. Acupuncture is my life.
All right, welcome back, everyone. Hope you guys are enjoying the discussion, and I hope you're downloading the app so that if you ever have any questions about any of the episodes, you can message me, and I'll be sure to respond at the end of a future episode with regard to any questions you may have for myself, Jackie, Dr. Ada, or even Centrella. But back to the discussion at hand, I want to get back to you with exercise. Because even as a licensed, board-certified doctor of acupuncture, I also take in a lot of dark energy from my patients, and I have to, you know, and so that when they walk out of my clinic, they feel much better. But then, even for me, in the times in which we'd been faced with, guess what my real outlet was to release? It was exercise.
Of course it was.
And that's why I asked you that, because even when I would lie in the bed and get up in the morning before coming to the clinic, I had to exercise. And the very few days that I didn't, I would come into the clinic and I would have bad days. And my patients would sense it. They would sense it. But because at one point you've trained me, I want you to explain to my audience, how does exercise serve as that mechanism to release and stabilize the mind, to help them get over worry and get going in their day, get them charged?
Well, I think exercise kind of steps in and just takes over in the moment, at least, right? So in the moment, the exercise becomes the thing. It becomes a thing that you are now focused on. So you either send love to it, emotion, hate, disdain, whatever you feel in that moment.
Sometimes people can't do that. Sometimes people, all right, it's not to say that they can't, but a lot of times what the big drawback to exercise is getting started.
No, it's not just that.
You don't think so?
It's in the mind. It's
have they started? Like,
it is okay. So when they get started, okay, they said half of the work is getting there. I think half of the work is getting there in your mind. Like, people make jokes about it, but you should start seeing yourself getting up, packing a gym bag, even if you have to go up before or after work or during your lunch. Start to see yourself, and even if in that moment you don't get there, just keep setting that intention. Because remember, the negative intention that you set to judge yourself, to say you can't work out, to say you never finish, you exercise that muscle, and that is the one that's getting stronger. So the mindset, for me, fitness, it starts in the mind. I see myself working out. I see myself enjoying fitness. I even say, if anybody can remember with me, I play beautiful music so that I can get you caught up in the emotion, the happiness of the song while we go through something very difficult. To give you that to listen to teach you to breathe and move past it.
But you know what made it tough for so many people, and the four of us were discussing this at the break, was membership. Gym memberships have dropped, and especially during the time when everything was restricted or closed, lockdown, you couldn't attend the gym. So it became tough for a lot of people to just get out of their bed, go downstairs, and start working out.
But you know what's the one thing that was really great? Was that every time you turned your TV on, you heard, get out, take a walk with your family. I myself bought a bike. My husband bought a bike. I love cycling. I'm a cycle instructor.
Bike or outdoor?
We bought real bikes, and we got rid of our car, and we ride our bikes. David rides his bike to work, and I ride my bike everywhere now. And even when I came to teach the class that day, I rode my bike. So I feel like it set new patterns for people. So people started to do what they would do when they want to survive. You figure out how to get what you need. It doesn't take a rocket science to tell you exercise works. It's been around since the beginning, and it works. Yoga is one of my favorite. If you don't have yoga, walk. It's very, very serious. You need a way to release. You need a way to think.
Because, I mean, just with worry like sort of exacerbates even chronic diseases.
That's right.
You know, because it, like I said, it knocks chi, which basically stills your energy and de-incentivizes you to move and walk. And that's why I'd asked the question. It's just more or less getting over that hump to do.
Yeah.
To actually do. What's your take on this, Dr. Ada?
Oh my God, I was listening to Cintrella and everything else that we're trying to convey here to our audience. I'll say 99.9% of your problems had to do with your cognition and how you think about things. Definitely you have to have affirmations about, okay, I don't want to get up, I'm staying here. So you're going to have to start modifying those patterns of behavior that are unhealthy to try to see if you could see positive outcomes. And if you don't do that, nothing is going to happen. We are trying to give you a support system here that you could access, that you could look at. Look, it works. Yes. Jackie's talking, you were talking. We have our personal and professional experience. We have maybe the education, the social support system, but we're saying try it and give yourself a chance to really live a life that is emotionally stable. It's not only the exercise, it's the combination of the exercise with your psychic, with your social environment.
How you talk to yourself.
How you talk to yourself, how you have this support system in place.
So you do see how worry as an emotion can cause disease. I mean, just listening to everyone, it's like
to the body.
you're still, and it's just, you got to break out of it and just be able to move forward.
Just with what you were talking about in terms of how people will give you or sense the energy, or you sense it from your patients. It's the same thing when you're talking about quote unquote negative people around you. So you need to kind of like tap into that and see if you could modify that and learn the new pattern, a new habit of dealing with that, because otherwise it's going to continue. You're going to get sick, you're going to get your stomach. If your eating habits is emotional, if you eat, you feel good.
Well, what about people that already are coined a worry wart, or I'm a worrier, my mom's a worrier, and now you've become a worrier, and how? Right. That's unfair.
You didn't become a worry. You manifested yourself as worry.
And then
you claimed it daily.
And that's unfair.
Unfair. And you don't have to be like your mother. You could make a decision to see it.
Say it again.
You don't have to
be
like your mother. And maybe, and this I learned, moms are not always right. You may see things differently, and clinicians are not always 100% right. We'll have to hear what we're not doing correct or in a happier way. I like the word happy. So we could hear it from the person who's coming to us and say, could we do this differently, and could you take this on in a different pattern, so we could incorporate what you're saying. I'm not the one who's saying, okay, you're sick and you're coming to me, I'm gonna fix you. No, you're gonna be part of this process so that we could both do it together. Okay, so we could both do it together. It's not, and the other part of it is that we're not exempt. Dr. Leroy is not exempt, Jackie's not exempt, Cintra is not exempt. I'm not exempt of feeling all of this. We're human, but we are trying to live a life differently that will give us that emotional stability on a day-to-day basis.
That's right.
To look at life in a happier manner.
Let me ask you this, Jackie. Like, let's just say with your own, just being a little more personal, let's say with your family and close friends, have you noticed anyone being able to get over this hurdle of worry? Like, have you noticed, since what everyone has gone through, right? They've encountered worry at a heightened level, and they were able to get past that. Have you noticed anyone able to get over it?
Yeah, I've noticed a couple of my friends I have friends who were so worried that it consumed them, and they became like recluses. And,
How did they get past it, though? I mean, to become reclusive, you want nothing to do with anyone.
I think, unfortunately, it was watching social media and television media tell them that things are okay now, and then going off of that rather than going off of what you are experiencing in the real world.
So on social media, that being, let's say, their friends.
Yeah.
People they're attached to.
Yes.
Wow.
If people are telling you
super.
it's still not safe to go outside, you're going to worry and stay home and not. Right. But if you're kind of, like myself and my husband and another close couple friend of ours, we were biking, we were out. We were worried, but we weren't worried enough to say, I'm not going to not get out there and live life carefully at the time. Yeah. But those friends, we kind of were on the same pathway and page. Interestingly enough, they became pregnant over this time, and they were trying for 8 years. I don't know what correlation that is. I don't know. But I'm telling you, and I'm not a clinician or anything.
And there's yoga for that. You know what I mean? There's yoga for everything. But for people who are experiencing problems having children, and a lot of the techniques is breathing. Yeah. Breathing, being present.
I think they allow themselves to finally breathe because there was not much else to do but let go. Well, for people that did let go, we just let, right?
I think so. I had a tremendous amount of growth during COVID. In a way I can't even, my style of communicating with my teenage daughter, my style of communicating with my husband, everything evolved. And I have to admit, it was because I practiced something differently. I didn't run from the emotion. I sat with it, experienced it, and I didn't judge it. And I decided if the emotion served me or not. And then I put it in whatever place it needed to be in. And I think with that allowed me to say, it's okay to be scared. Let's just put the scared in perspective.
Yeah.
How are you going to deal with it now? We don't need to repeat we're scared 900 times to everyone we speak to. Instead, we'll say, hey, what are you doing to not be afraid? Or Googling how not to be afraid.
Yeah.
Oh, play this game, because then you're like, what do you mean play a game? Well, because now you're not worrying. Don't you see? You're playing the game. Your mind is here. Now you're breathing at a nice pattern. You inhale, you exhale. And you can have that moment to say, in this moment here now, I can choose to stay here. I can convert back to the thing that didn't make me feel so good. That gave me all this tightness in my neck and in my ears and in my shoulders and my back.
Yeah.
Right? It just becomes, I like the way that one feels better.
Yeah.
I like the way riding outside. I literally go outside. I go outside every day.
Cynthia, did you read the book? Did you read the books in psychology or clinical social work?
Some of them.
Because I know, because that's actually what happens. We call it overdetermined. No wonder you feel this way because you can't really tap on the emotion. So, it hurts over here, or it hurts over here. You make it physical and tangible so that you could touch it and say, I'm hurting here. But you're not labeling the emotion. So you're going to have to go through the process of trying to identify that. So we become repetitious, but that's the whole point. That a lot of people try to do that, and then it becomes unhealthy. And then it happens, you have a psychological disorder, quote unquote. Whereas on the contrary, for your friends, they allow the neuron to send the message, now send the egg cell and send the sperm to really fertilize the egg and make it happen. To me, it's like, whoa, it sounds like magic, but it's reality. Yeah. No wonder it happened.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, really.
Because,
we speculate, but when you break it down with someone like yourself, yes, that's what happened.
That is so
after
cool.
8 years of trying, that finally is what it took for them to conceive a baby.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, there's been quite a few blessings that actually came from this COVID situation that many individuals don't realize. And I love what both Centrella and Dr. Ada were speaking about, the neck and chest and back. A lot of the muscles that support the lungs are in those areas. And that's why I said earlier, lung chi is affected, becomes stagnant, because when those muscles tighten up, shallow breathing. And I see that when my patients present with those types of symptoms, I know what to do. But guys, I just want to say thanks for being here. And we have other great shows coming up.
Yep.
And to you guys, we'll be right back after this message.
Acupuncture is my life. Acupuncture is my life. Acupuncture is my life. Acupuncture is my life.
Hello everyone and welcome back. I hope you had a chance to download the app so that if you were to have any questions pertaining to this episode, which is a hot topic, worry, you can message the Acupuncture is My Life clinic and ask any question you want pertaining to this episode, and we attempt to answer them either directly back to you via message or in a future episode. But I want to jump back into this discussion on worry, and I'm so excited to have world-renowned registered dietitian. I mean, Elizabeth Madison, she's the best, and I'm lucky to have her here today. How are you, young lady?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me back. I love talking to you and discussing these really important topics, especially this one.
Well, worry, as I began at the beginning of the show, we're aware, but most of our audience isn't. Worry is like one of the most common emotional causes of disease globally. And that's what surprises so many individuals. Why? Because so much has changed radically relative to social disposition, everyone's position socially, and just the global connections that have evolved over the past few decades. People began to worry more because they had to assimilate with different cultures and different experiences, and it changed their way of living. And this is why worry has grown so much to be like one of the biggest causes of disease from an emotional perspective. Now, I notice this when people or individuals or patients walk into the Acupuncture is My Life clinic. I see it right away. They tend to present like with tense shoulders. And when I'm doing a diagnosis, there'll be abdominal distension, there'll be like slight shortness of breath, there's coughing, things like that. That's how I know, like, let's say the lungs are involved or the spleen is involved when there's a poor appetite or abdominal distension, or even the liver. The liver can be involved in the diagnosis where I can see someone has been heavily impacted by excessive worry, where it's chronic and it's leading to disease. And how can I tell is because their liver qi would begin to stagnate, or the yang of the liver would rise to the head. And they'll experience a lot of tension and stiffness and achiness in the trapezius muscles. To me, that's an indicator that the yang of the liver is excessively rising, or even the heart can get involved. And the qi of the heart would tend to stagnate, and there'll be discomfort in the chest. There'll be signs of even insomnia, which is very interesting. But I want to ask you a question. And we had an interesting discussion off camera. And I know you couldn't finish because you're busy, but I do want to ask you, how does worry affect the brain?
Oh man, the worry, thing about worry is, and you're right, there are so, with the world expanding and people knowing more about what's going on in the world, and especially because of this pandemic, has created a lot of worry. And when we are trying to figure out our world, trying to figure out what the future is going to look like, and that's really all worry is. Trying to determine, how do I have some controls in my life, what's going to happen next, and we start doing projections and what if scenarios. But the mind was never designed to have to think about things at that level, and so you basically overtax the brain, because the brain is trying to figure out what's going on. And sometimes when we worry too much, it triggers what's called the sympathetic system, and what that does, it releases cortisol, because it's our flight or fight response, because we're trying to figure out what's going on, how we're going to control it. And when we can't, the brain goes into overdrive, and when we think that something is going to happen, again, it releases that flight or fight response, and that releases hormones like cortisol. When the brain starts telling the body to release cortisols, that's not a good thing, because what's happening is when we are in a flight or fight response, that means we're getting ready to take action. that means the body requires extra energy, extra fuel, because we're about to throw down, get into something that may require physical activity. However, we're just worrying. So now the body's dumping all this sugar, all these fats, these fatty acids called triglycerides into the bloodstream, but there's no movement. And so what happens is when that's happening, your body is out, your bloodstream is filled with all this energy that it doesn't need, and that leads to breakdown in the system.
Yeah. Now, the interesting part about that, when you speak of the parasympathetic aspect of the autonomic nervous system, now, when we go into this state of fight or flight, that means we cannot properly digest food.
Correct.
Whereas the parasympathetic aspect of the autonomic nervous system is relax, digest, you can move bowels easily. It's just so much, and the body can properly repair itself. And this is where I want to jump into things, furthering this discussion, whereas when we're in the a sympathetic state of being, I'm getting tongue twisted here, I need my water. Sympathetic state of being, we cannot properly digest food. Correct. Now, like you said, we have all this cortisol, triglycerides in the blood, so forth and so on, and it becomes chronic.
Yes.
And expand on how that becomes a further problem.
Because what happens is the body is continuously dysregulated because it doesn't know. Remember, the body is designed to use energy only when it needs it, okay? And the brain only operates on certain types of energy. And so when you take something that doesn't require physical activity and it starts to create the need for energy for physical activity that doesn't exist, it really starts to affect the body. And like you said, Dr. Lott, the body's like, what's going on? And it could affect you in different ways. Absolutely, it affects the digestive system. I have folks that come in and, yes, I'm a dietitian, but I do what's called a nutrition-focused physical exam, because I want to see what else is going on with them. And so when I see symptoms like nausea, irritable bowel syndrome, digestive issues in general, like cramping, bloating, gassiness, diarrhea, constipation, people don't make the connection between the worry and how it's affecting their brain and their body. And so that's really important about understanding how the worry, that constant chronic worry, affects your body. In addition, like you said, your muscle starts to ache. You get muscle pains. You get fatigue. Sometimes you just be sitting there and your heartbeat starts to go, very fast. And again, we don't make the connection. Now, on top of that, the food that you eat can make all of that a lot worse.
It's so cool, everything you just said. And when you flip it over, and this is why I love working with you when it comes to, treating patients. Everything you just said, like the different internal organs, okay? Like you're just sitting there and the heart just starts beating faster. That's how an acupuncturist knows that worry now, chronic worry, is affecting the heart and stagnating heart chi, the chi of the heart, because you'll get these palpitations. And individuals will also experience like insomnia, okay, and chest discomfort. Or when it affects the lungs, because now the shoulder muscles tense up. There's tightness in the chest, there's slight shortness of breath. So it's so interesting. But I want to ask you this. When it comes to worry, what types, as a registered dietitian and a nutritionist, what types of foods exacerbate worry?
And that is an excellent question, because people don't make the connection between worry and the foods that they eat. So let me give you a scenario. So, you had extra work going on at the job because people are calling in sick, whatever, and now you're trying to figure out, how long is this gonna last? Is this gonna, am I gonna be able to handle this? Is this gonna, have me doing lots of overtime? So you're already in a state of worry. Then you reach over to your coworker's desk because they have chocolate on their desk. They have that candy dish, or you're going to go to the vending machine and you're going to get those potato chips or those Doritos or those snacky foods, and then you wonder, after you've eaten those temporarily, you get some relief. But then you start feeling maybe anxious again. Maybe you start getting that rapid heartbeat. You start breathing a little more shallow, and you don't make the connection, because those foods that you just ate cause a blood sugar spike because they're refined. Added sugars, refined carbohydrates, all those snacky foods, highly processed foods, highly refined foods, those bagels, those crackers, yes, Ritz crackers and things like that, saltines. You know, when we start snacking on those things in a way emotionally to manage the worry, it actually makes the worry worse because, number one, it drops a lot of sugar into your blood, which causes blood sugar spikes, and that can make you anxious because it puts your body into overdrive as your body is trying to manage insulin levels, manage the uptake of that sugar. On top of that, a lot of those foods, especially those refined carbohydrates, those sugars, the candies, the cakes, the pastries, the ice cream, the full fat ice cream, and all those, they create inflammation in the body. A lot of those foods are pro-inflammatory. And when you have inflammation, chronic inflammation in your body caused by the food, that makes the worry just that much more worse. And that makes it harder to manage. And a lot of people don't even realize that that is what's going on, that their food intake is directly impacting their state of worry. And it becomes a vicious cycle. They eat to alleviate the worry, but the food that they're eating creates more symptoms that makes the worry worse.
Wow. And you know, the interesting part is you began saying once the blood is flooded with cortisol and triglycerides, inflammation.
Yes.
So now I take it you're compounding that with these refined carbs and stuff that you're putting in, right?
Right. Absolutely, because what people don't realize is that what does the body do when we eat too much food? When we eat a lot of these refined carbohydrates, and you remember, your body's going to utilize the energy if it needs it. But if it doesn't need it, what does it do? It stores it as fat. Triglycerides are a form of fat, and your body will store it for when you need it. But when you have too much that storage on board, right, that causes chronic inflammation. And so now you have all this triglyceride. Remember, let me go back. You never want too many triglycerides in your bloodstream because that can lead to illness, sickness, chronic inflammation. But if the cortisol is dumping all these triglycerides and sugar into your bloodstream, then you have inflammation just running rampant throughout your entire system. And that's what starts the symptoms that you mentioned, Dr. Lott, the muscle aches, the pain, the digestive issues. I mean, there are so many symptoms related to this.
Right. Now, you know what's interesting, and I want to ask you a question because I know you're an expert at this, is it correct that our brain utilizes 70% of the carbs that we have? Now, you're flooding all of these refined carbs inside of you. Like, what is that doing to the brain? Is it like getting it to like just be all over the place?
Exactly. So what happens is...
So it's exacerbating worry.
Exactly, because what happens is, the brain utilizes so much glucose. In fact, glucose is your brain's primary source of energy. All right, it can't use protein in life. It's like ketones. That's a whole different discussion. But primarily, it uses sugar. Now, here you are. You're in a state of worry, so you're already in a heightened state, and your brain's trying to figure out all these different things. And then you dump more sugar in your system. All right, and now your brain is like being flooded with it, and that causes the following: irritability, increased lack of concentration, shortened memory. So I have folks that say, you know what, I just put my keys down, I can't find my keys, I forgot to do this, I forgot to do that. The first thing I'll ask them is, what are you worried about? And what are you eating? Because the foods we eat can either sharpen our focus or it can minimize it and decrease it. And one of the things I talk to my folks about is food fog. Because refined carbohydrates, excessive carbohydrates can lead to food fog, which is kind of like a brain fuzziness that you just can't focus, you can't maintain focus. And people don't realize that it's the foods that they take in.
Wow, that's so cool. And I love how you spoke of, let's say, examples as irritability. That's how another way in which the liver, and an acupuncturist understands, the liver is affected. Irritability sort of correlates with the rising of the yang of the person's liver. And when you spoke of like lack of concentration, that again the spleen, because the spleen meridian is responsible for memory and concentration, as well as abdominal distension, poor appetite, and things of that nature. So the connection overall is great. But now, Elizabeth, I want to ask you a question. What foods are great for managing worry?
Okay, so here we go. First thing, we have to do this in kind of two parts. One, we do an assessment to find out what they're eating and when they're eating. All right, because that also plays a huge role in worry. Then we have to start eliminating those foods that are exacerbating the worry. So because it doesn't matter if we say, okay, we want you to eat this food, that food, because it will help you with the worry, if you're still taking in those foods that will exacerbate the worry. So first step is to do a detox, all right? Give that liver a break along with your entire digestive system, right? So you start feeling clear already. Then we start, putting in those healthy foods. For example, foods that are chock full of antioxidants, all right? To start fighting those free radicals, to start getting rid of all those excessive triglycerides, to help your body, reset itself hormonally, getting those cortisol and those other stress hormones back into a regular, normal flow. And then really looking at those vegetables again, because those properties that they have will calm you down. There are other foods like spices and herbs that really, like turmeric, cumin, oregano, these foods calm your body down. Even herbal teas like chamomile is one of the things I tell my clients every night, especially because we tend to overeat at night. We tend to reach for those refined carbohydrates out of reward, which just causes spikes. Have some chamomile tea. Put a teaspoon of turmeric in it. It will calm you down. Those are some of the foods that we know can fight the exacerbated effects of worry.
Wow, that is so cool. It's great to hear. And the coolest part about this is you're discussing foods relative to colors, and these colors are important.
Yes.
Especially the leafy green vegetables. Now, I'm no dietitian, but as an acupuncturist, I have to be aware of the colors of foods and how they affect the body, because when I'm assessing a patient and they're eating too much of a particular color of food, that plays into me determining which meridian has been impacted. Let's say irritability, the patient may want to eat green leafy vegetables because that's great for the liver. It brings down liver yang and it puts things back into perspective. So I love how you spoke of the different vegetables and things of that nature. But my question becomes the detox part. Like, how does that work? Like, how does it work? I'm confused with that.
This is my favorite part, right? So I am client-centered, right? I always start with the person that's at, because if I had my way, I would send them off to a camp, right? Where they wouldn't have to worry about their job, their dogs, their spouses, their kids, and they'll be there for a month, and then we can completely get rid of all those foods that were creating all this inflammation and hormonal dysregulation, and then replace it with all the foods that will heal their bodies, and they'll be great in like a month, right? However, then we come back down to reality. People have to go to work and pay the bills. So I ask the person, my clients, where do you want to start? First, we do a full-blown assessment of their food plan. And I ask them to really write down everything that they've eaten, no matter what it is. If you're like having this secret affair with Malamars and Twinkies, put it down. We need to know what it is. And then I ask people, where do you want to start? Not everybody's ready to let go of all the sugar they take in all at one time. And you have to be careful about that, because depending on the level of added sugars they take in, it can really have a nasty kind of detox reaction where they can have skin breakouts, they can have headaches, even migraines, because their body is detoxing from all that added sugar and such. And so even letting go of the animal protein, like the fatty meats, like the bacon and the sausage and anything comes in casings, I could be here all day. But when your body has adapted to that level of neglect and abuse, it's going to resist when you try to remove all those things. So that's why I always focus on what are they ready to start first. Is it eliminating 80% of the animal protein? Is it eliminating the refined carbohydrates? Is it just letting go of the gluten-containing foods? Because if we find out they have a gluten intolerance, that could be one of the reasons why they're having the digestive issues. And the worry makes everything worse. So I really started trying to focus on what they're ready to let go of and let it go. Like, not some people are not ready for a full-on divorce. So we'll just do a legal separation for a while, because mentally, people are not ready to quote unquote give it up, but we're not really giving it up. We're letting it go, because what we're taking in exchange is health and healing. And so for everything they're ready to let go, we can replace it with something that's going to heal their bodies. So we're looking at more of those fruits and vegetables that are aligned with their bodies, because like you said, Dr. Lott, not all vegetables are great for everybody. All right, it really is what vegetables work for that person. Especially if they're on some medications. Okay, so we also have to take that into account. So by identifying the foods that are creating the inflammation and are, causing the dysregulation, being where the client is at, saying, okay, what are you ready to let go? And one thing I do is, if they're ready to let go of one type of food, we'll do that for 2 weeks. Then if they develop some confidence and comfortability with that food no longer in their food plan, we go to the next food we need to let go. And over time, they start adapting, their taste buds start, resetting themselves. They're bringing in those healthy foods that the body loves, and they start feeling better. And all those symptoms that we mentioned, they start dissipating.
That is so cool, because, just thinking about what you just said with regard to food, and even how it can damage a person, yes, how the body gets hooked on it. And apparently, those are the patients that come into the Acupuncture is My Life clinic with pre-existing disharmonies in the internal organs relative to diet, making them prone to worry. But you said something that was very interesting that I didn't think about, okay? What are you ready to let go of, right?
Yes.
Now, what's key here is you say you'd love to take them off to the Elizabeth Madison camp,
yes,
and just isolate them.
Yes.
But in reality, they're home. Mm-hmm. And how much do you feel their spouses and children influence their diet? And how are you able to, get them to just focus on theirs and not pay attention to the husband or the mm-hmm. wife or what the kids want to eat? Right. How do you handle that?
Oh man, that is the biggest challenge, because I tell a lot of my clients, you would do great if you lived alone, right? Just move into a studio apartment and you'd be fine. But a lot of my folks are, they're married, or they have partners, they have kids, they have busy jobs, they have coworkers, and how do you make it all fit? So one of the things I do, I and my team of dietitians, when we do an initial consultation, and for the first couple of sessions, we really do a lifestyle assessment, okay? Because who else in your life impacts your wellness? Who else in your life impacts your ability to prioritize self-care? Because if your husband is not on board with changing his food habits, and you still have to cook for him, and you're trying to change yours, how do you manage that? And so, we don't want our clients to become, short order chefs where they're preparing foods for the husband or the partner, and for the kids and for themselves, because that is not sustainable. And so one of the things we will figure out is, okay, for example, let's say, Mr. Husband or Miss Wife wants a particular food. Well, make sure that has vegetables in it, and you can have everything but that particular fatty food. So if they want, like, say, oxtail, right, and they want that rice, well, can you make cauliflower rice on the side? Can you make at least 2 vegetables for every meal? Can you do what I call stealth nutrition, where you're blending in vegetables into that turkey meatloaf, so people don't even know that it's there? Can you introduce smoothies? So everybody likes smoothies, but your smoothie would be a little different. So it really is about sitting down and collaborating with the client, looking at, a SWOT analysis, right? Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, right? Wow. And I actually do that with my clients.
So cool.
Yeah, because let's be realistic. Why does let's focus on the diet industry. Why does the diet industry have a 95% failure rate, but yet it is a multi-billion-dollar, off-the-chain successful business? Because they thrive on people's failures, because people don't know how to make changes that are sustainable. And so when I work with my folks, I'm like, okay, let's do things one step at a time. Sometimes the first step is just getting more water. Just drink. If we can get you to, if you're drinking 2 bottles a day, let's start with 4. Because even just staying more hydrated is going to make you feel better. Staying more hydrated can actually improve memory, improve focus, improve concentration. So it really depends on, where we can start. But when it comes to that family, we sit down and we develop customized strategies that would work for that person so that they don't feel like this is too much. In addition, we also have to develop some cognitive changes, right? I call it cognitive behavioral therapy. And I focus on CBT with my clients because they have to understand what are the thoughts they're thinking that's affecting their decision making. So for example, I have clients that were raised in the in the clean plate club, which means that they were taught that you don't leave anything on the plate. You eat everything on your plate. Now, 45 years later, if there's more food on the plate, they are acting as a human garbage can and they're eating all that food. We have to change that whole cognitive process and say, no, I am not a human garbage can. I am not going to eat everything on my plate if I'm full. And so one of the things I might do is just put less food on my plate. Those are the kind of things to start leading to the food changes. Also, do you have to cook every single night? Where did you get that information from? So we may have to change that and do more batch cooking. So there are ways that we start in the mind, because be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Let's start in the mind, and let's start with, any thoughts that can be that are getting in your way. And once we get there, the changes that they make become less challenging.
Wow. Now, here's the key. I love what you just said, but that works excellent, let's say, for our mate. But then the kid factor comes in. You got to let my audience know how to address the kids, because to say, hey, I'm going to put veggies in the meatloaf or whatever, and they're going to, they're not going to want to eat the veggies.
Hold on, you don't tell them you put veggies in the meatloaf, right? No, you don't do that. That's like saying, no, that's just like a setup for failure, right? So with the kids, right. Yeah, that's a setup for failure. So I consult for daycare centers, and we have to do stealth nutrition, right? Because if you tell the kids, we just put spinach and carrots in your meatloaf, they'd be like, you got to be kidding, right? So what we do is we blend it in a food processor, mix it into the turkey meatloaf, and we call it rainbow turkey meatloaf, and the kids love it. Now, that's just a side thing that I do with my daycare centers, right, to help them, introduce new foods to the kids. Right. Now, the most important thing, though, when it comes to with the kids, is you need buy-in. One of the worst things I hear parents say is, number one, I do all the cooking and my kids just sit down. No. Anybody who has a vested interest in something is more likely to go along with it. So my question is, do you sit down as a family and do menu planning for the week? Do you give the children options of what they can have? Not, what do you want to eat? That is a question doomed for failure. Yeah. No, what would you like to eat? Turkey meatloaf or baked chicken? When you give people options, people feel like they have control, and children are no different. So if you sit down with your kids and say, okay, these are the options for the week, guys. What do you want to cook? What do you want to make? Now, second, have the kids in the kitchen with you. And I know some of my moms out there are like, oh, Elizabeth, it takes too much time. I just want to get the meal over with. But however, if you just be a little patient with them, right, and you have them in the kitchen, they can be your sous chef, right? They can be doing the chopping and the chopping and the slicing and the putting things together and helping you the batch cooking. Children love to learn to cook. There are so many cooking classes out there for kids. You can go on the YouTube videos. Even Sesame Street does cooking, to inspire children to understand, one, where their food comes from. So when you ask them, where does your chicken come from? You don't hear the answer at the supermarket. They actually know where it comes from. Yeah, that's a whole different issue. And they have more buy-in. So with the kids, and yes, this takes time, but the return on your investment is 100-fold. And when the kids are more on board, then it helps you stay more on board in terms of making those changes.
And the fact that it affects generations down the line. Because let's say worry as an emotional disorder. It can become an emotional disorder. And the fact that those children can cook for their families and teach them and really cut back on different mental and emotional disorders they can be faced with. But I want to say, Elizabeth, thank you for speaking with my audience with regard to worry, and they should expect to see much more of you in the future. And until next time, we're sitting with world-renowned registered dietitian and nutritionist Elizabeth Madison. We'll be back right after this commercial break.
Thank you.
Acupuncture is my life. Acupuncture is my life. Acupuncture is my life. Acupuncture is my life.
Welcome back. I hope you've had time to download the Acupuncture is My Life app. For if you were to have any questions pertaining to worry as becoming a chronic disorder, you can ask questions via the messaging section on the app. But other than that, if you ever find yourself consumed with chronic worry, simply see a local acupuncturist or contact Acupuncture is My Life, because this is a disorder, if held on to too long, can serve as a cause of disease. And that's something none of us want to happen. So you know what? Do me a favor. Make acupuncture a part of your life, because acupuncture is my life. What's yours?
My life. Acupuncture is 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 my